Hey, welcome to Art with Ian. Today we're talking about creature design. That's coming up next. All right, welcome to episode 7 of the creature design series, the final episode. We are going to be going in and just doing some final cleanup and tie down painting to get our line work painted out. As you can see, like I said, I did paint some environment for this guy to help us kind of ground him in a space that looks more like where he would belong than, just a random gray background. But as you can tell by painting an environment, the line work on him really looks out of place now. More, because there's no line work anywhere. That's not the style. This is a painting, not really a line work illustration or whatever. So if I turn this line drawing off, you can see how much we lose, right? We lose detail. And so that's what I need to do is I need to get in here and kind of tie this all down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my opacity down on the line drawing, not completely off, because I want to have, I want to be able to see just that little bit kind of where it's at. And then I'm going to create a new layer over the top of everything. Call it clean up. And then I'm just going to go in here, zoom in. We're now in zoom in time, whereas previously we've kind of, a lot of the time, we've tried to keep zoomed out as much as we can. Now it's kind of time to zoom in. I'm going to get this color kind of in here, this deep shadow. I'm using my chalky render brush as always, and I'm just going to start painting where I want this to, feel more tied down. And this is, you can kind of see where the line work was holding it together. And now that your job is basically to go in here, we're not using layer modes anymore or anything like that. Just going in and painting to tie things down. I definitely want his eye to pop here. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to leave his eye like this, or if I want to do like a, like an all like blacked out kind of an eye with like a reflecting the sky kind of a look. I mean, he wouldn't have an eye like this in real, if it was real, unless he's blind. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to have an eye that looks like that. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you don't just redraw line work. Like, that's not the purpose of this, is, to just refollow your line work. We're trying to deepen the shadows in sensible places that follows the line work, which, but we're not, like, for example here, like, I don't want just to draw a straight line that follows this. I'm going to get kind of deeper in here and then let it fall off a bit and then kind of get deeper again in here. And that's the reason why we're not leaving the line work in, because we don't see just lines in nature, in natural things. We see where things get into deeper shadow, and then they fall, they fall into shadow and come into the light. We're trying to emulate that more. A line drawing doesn't quite do that. But along here, along the arm, everything here is going to be in deep shadow. So it can kind of just push it that little bit. back side of his hand right into here. Along there. Remember there's like a ridge here, so let's have it kind of dip in to the deepest shadow before it pops kind of back out a little bit there. A little bit in here, kind of a core shadow along there, which, you know, this is a rounded form, so, you know, let's just think of our fundamentals. You know, we got light into shadow, core shadow, and then it comes back into ambient light. So we're just popping that in a little bit more. Can reinforce some of these shadows on this side of these spikes. Also push some shadows coming off of these ones. Reinforce some of that there. You can kind of just tell how this process works. It's like you decide how far you want to push it, you know? How much detail do you want to go with? Like, you can kind of get, I mean, you could go on and on and on with this for hours and hours, you know? Or you could just be kind of do a quick pass and just be kind of loose and take it as far as you think is necessary to feel happy with your finished product. You know, not every painting has to be some kind of a over detailed thing, and then there are times where you really want to see how far you can take it. So for this one, I want it to feel organic and believable, but I'm not going to go to, like, you know, where you start zooming into like crazy levels and drawing wrinkles within the wrinkles kind of level. You know, it's just not, it's not my intention for this, and it typically is not my intention for work, because most people are going to view it pretty zoomed out, actually, and it's going to be the immediate read of the image that hits them. You know, it's not going to be, typically it's not going to be something that they zoom in and they start investigating. I mean, maybe like a hardcore art person might, you know, like want to go in and inspect the work on that kind of a level, but most people, that's not how they digest art. Typically it's the immediate impact. How did it make me feel? And if you can get your details tight enough to do that for them, chances are then you know, job done. Okay, I'm going to start palette mixing straight off of my work. So basically just holding down Alt to get that color picker up. I just wanted this to feel more down into the shadow a little bit, and then I can pop like a tiny bit of light onto here. If you've been following along, you'll know that this is supposed to, this form over here is on the other side of this whole ridge of his body, and so that this needs to kind of come into the light there. Also maybe a little bit of light right along there. I also want to do some fall off on this where the light's turning, the, you know, because the form's turning and I want the light to turn, you know, fall off on this form a little bit more believably. When I had the line work in there, it was just something I wasn't going to be able to pull off because the line would have interfered with me seeing this gradation properly. And so it's just something that I left for now. And you can see how just getting a little bit of fall off of the light in there helps it to feel a little bit more like a real rounded form instead of just, you know, some kind of silly, well, not silly, I mean, it just makes it feel more believable instead of like just like a straight line going along a form. Which, if you're doing, you know, heavily graphic work or, you know, a different type of work than what this is meant to do, then that can obviously be great. but that's not really what I'm trying to accomplish here, so. Okay, we can get into some of our ambient light now and sort of do the same thing we just did with the other light, where we make sure that our fall off of light is more, you know, believable. That was obviously way too much. But on some of these rounded forms, you know, just making sure that the light really falls into the form. I think that this ambient light might actually hit along here too, which gives us a nice introduction of like really, really warm and really cool, kind of in close proximity, which is nice. I need to make sure I don't completely lose that dark feeling as well, that where it really, that turn happens. So just kind of play it back and forth. But yeah, you can see basically how this process works. I never did this knuckle. I have a habit of kind of jumping around. I don't like to get caught up in one spot. It's something that I've learned over time is I can get caught up in details. Noodling details is definitely one of my weaknesses. So if I try to always be, as I'm doing one thing, I'm kind of like I'm trying to look around, like what other area could use a treatment like that, and I try to jump to it before I just get totally out of control doing that one spot. Okay, we can grab some green now. Let's introduce some bounce light like up under his leg right here. And that's obviously pushed really hard, like harder than it would be, honestly. But sometimes sometimes you take liberties that go beyond what we see in real life in order to further sell your design, depending on how realistic you want it to be, obviously. And the nice thing is that I can always come back and just quiet this reflected light down a little bit too. Need some occlusion. I want the bounce light, but I need some occlusion too, right where those forms actually touch the surface. Maybe get a little bit on his knuckle right here. So yeah, you can basically see how this process works. You know, you just work it, keep working it, keep working it, until you kind of end up at a place where you like what you've got going on. Still undecided on that eye. Like, do I do like maybe just a beady black eye that's catching reflected light? I mean, that's kind of what feels right for this guy, but I kind of like that it's lit like this. So it kind of puts me in a little bit of a tough spot, like I'm not sure exactly. there's always trying. I could just try it out and see what I get. I'm just gonna lightly introduce some textures here. Just breaking this up with a little very light texturing through there. Could just make his eyes like glowing. That just doesn't work, sadly. If it was more of a fantasy piece, maybe, but I mean, obviously it is a fantasy piece, this creature design. Creature doesn't exist, but I'm kind of going, like, trying to go semi into a land, like into a land of more believable design. So maybe let's just try blacking his eye out. Go super dark with it here. And then grab some of this blue light. And do that kind of a treatment. Might even be a good time to grab the old airbrush, which I typically don't use on these kinds of organic forms, but just to get this rendered out in a very nice round feeling. I'm going to go all the way black now, which I also rarely do. But I really want this to pop. I want to get this feeling like it's like the darkest spot on him right through here. Now let's zoom out here. I think that probably works. So I could keep going. I don't want the video to get too long. I'm assuming you guys kind of get the picture on how this works. So like if I turn this off, you can see what we were dealing with, and then kind of where we brought it up to. So just that tying things down, and just keep working it. Just keep working it until it reaches the point where you're happy. It's at the detail level that you like. Now, one thing I'm kind of wondering about, maybe pushing this leg back a tiny bit, like, because this guy is actually really huge. Like, here's my human scale. There's a person, and this is kind of like a, think of like those old kind of movies, like monster, like things are huge here, right? Like this place is big. Like this bird is big, the birds. The plant life is pretty average, but the creatures are large. So, let's turn that off. So just wondering about maybe like pushing like this leg back, and maybe grab like this gray and an airbrush. I'm not sure, this might not work, but you know, just pushing it like tiny bit back into space. That's probably too much already. Let's get the old eraser. Actually, we can just use we can use the opacity. Let's turn it on just a tiny bit. Yeah, it might kind of help sell just that little bit of size. It's not doing a ton, and I can't go too far with it because it's like, you know, he's not that big. You wouldn't actually see atmospheric perspective from this arm to that leg. It's just one of those little things you can do to kind of try to help, you know, get a read on the three-dimensionality of it. Subtle. It might be still too much though. Let's just turn it down to like 30. Yeah, just a tiny bit. Anyways, I think I'm gonna call this one. I had a really good time doing this series. Creature design is something that I really love. It's one of my favorite things to do as an artist. I hope that if you followed along from front to back, I hope that you really learned a lot during this series. And for my next series, I'm going to be getting into environment design, because as I was putting the environment in for this guy, I thought that might be something really useful to some of you guys to, you know, learn how to paint in environments and some of that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to miss the next series, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notifications when I post videos. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Comment on, you know, any thoughts you have about it, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.